What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm doing another 100 Movies I've Missed update. This is actually the fourth update that I'll be doing on the channel. I've done 3 so far. The first one I did was for the first 25 movies I watched, and from then on out, I've been doing every 10 movies that I watched, but I'm just excited to be back with another video because these are a lot of fun for me. Like I said, this is a project that I started at the beginning of the year. It was actually my New Year's resolution to watch 100 movies that I had never seen before, whether it be a classic or just a movie I'd only seen parts of on TV. So I am super pumped to be back here with another video. Before I give you the 10 movies that I watched in this edition, I wanted to say I'm over halfway done. I am 55 movies in, so I'm kind of patting myself on the back, feeling pretty good about it. I'm pacing myself, kind of find out how many movies I need to watch each month instead of rushing through it. I know Jack over at Fanatic Films is really killing it. He's almost done with this thing, which is awesome. And I know he's going to keep going, but definitely check out his channel if you have not, because he's also doing the 100 Movies I Missed project. I'll leave the channel link in the description down below. I'm 55 movies done, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the next 10 that I have watched since the last update video. So first off, I watched Groundhog Day, the Bill Murray rom-com, if you want to call it, classic. This is the movie that's known for its classic plot device, as Bill Murray keeps reliving the same day over and over. I finally understand that reference now because I have seen this movie. The movie as a whole isn't necessarily my favorite. I think it has some funny elements, and I always love to see Bill Murray on screen. I think he's super charming and one of just the coolest guys ever, honestly. But the movie itself gets fairly dark towards the second to third act. I thought that it opened really strong and I was locked in, but then it did start to get a little too redundant, and sure, that's kind of the point of the movie, but for me, it didn't really click. I did like the way that it wrapped up, kind of had a smile on my face, so I didn't love this movie, but I didn't hate it by any means. I think that it is a solid movie for what it is. The next movie that I watched is Along Came Polly, a rom-com starring Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston, and I would classify this movie as a feel-good movie. These are usually comedy or rom-com movies that might not have me dying from laughter the whole time, but at the same time, I enjoy the story so much that it just makes me feel good inside, makes me feel happy, and that's exactly what Along Came Polly does. Philip Seymour Hoffman as Sandy Lyle, a side character, has some of the best moments in the entire film, and I know Trevor over at Film Geeks recommended this one to me, so thank you, man. I really enjoyed it, and I know that he loves this movie. But for me, I did have a great time with it. I think that it is very solid. It's not my favorite movie of all time, but it got the job done for what it was going for, and I had a smile on my face when the credits rolled. And the same thing kind of goes with the next movie I watched, which is The Wedding Singer, starring Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. Now, I did really enjoy this movie, and I think that it might be my favorite Adam Sandler movie as far as his comedies go and rom-coms go, because I loved the music in it. I thought that it had a great soundtrack, and Adam Sandler is actually a really good singer, which to some might be a shock, but if you've seen his SNL work, he's got some pretty funny stuff there. But seeing his performance here, he actually gives a really good performance because he's not just cracking jokes the whole time. He's kind of down on his luck throughout this movie, and you get to see hints of his dramatic acting chops, which we get to see later in movies like Punch Drunk Love and Uncut Gems. But in this movie, he's very great. Seeing his chemistry with Drew Barrymore develop throughout the movie, it's very heartfelt, and of course, there's some common tropes that you see in rom-coms, but I love the ending, and the song that plays towards the end of the film and one of the big scenes really did warm my heart. Next is another rom-com. Yes, I was on a rom-com kick during this 10-movie phase. What can I say, you know? Sometimes you just are. And that is When Harry Met Sally, starring Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. Now, I've heard a lot of praise from people about this movie, so I kind of had really high hopes. My expectations were very high, and I was unfortunately let down by this movie. I rarely laughed, and it's classified as a rom-com, rightfully so, but it just wasn't very funny to me throughout, and that was disappointing. But also, this movie just deals with a relationship where I was frustrated the entire time, and I know that it's a movie, but for me, I was just like, just sit down and have a simple conversation, and most of this movie could be fixed. Now, sure, that's kind of a nitpick, but for me, I've always been irritated in romantic films when simple conversation could solve some of the plotting, and that's what the case was here. I just found myself frustrated with these characters through most of the film, and it kind of made it hard for me to get on board with them and really like them as people, because they were clearly avoiding a romance that was there. And sure, you could argue that's the point, but for me, I just never loved it. I was disappointed by this movie, unfortunately. It's still a classic. I totally see why people like it. Rob Reiner directed it I think he did a great job with the way the story's told, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. The next movie I watched, I'll go ahead and say it is incredible. I don't know how I've missed it, and that is 8 Mile, starring Eminem himself. And this acts as kind of a loose telling of his own story, kind of a biopic in a way. And he plays the character of Rabbit, and I just loved this movie from the start. I've always been a fan of his music since I was younger, especially the song Till I Collapse, Lose Yourself, which is played at the end of this film. You feel for the character of Rabbit. You see he doesn't have the best home life. He's kind of in a crappy situation, and he has this hidden talent that he's a great rapper, but because of where he lives, he's kind of made fun of in a sense, doesn't feel like he really ever has the time to fully shine, kind of embarrassed in a way. And seeing his arc throughout the film is fantastic. You see Anthony Mackie in here as Papa Doc, who plays this awful character. I just wanted to punch him in the face throughout the entire movie, and the final act delivered on everything I wanted. I think the story is just so brilliant. I loved how personal it felt for Eminem himself. And when it comes to rap movies, I think this is the best one I've ever seen. Next, I watched a classic 80s cheesy action movie for the first time, Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. This movie was just a ton of fun from start to finish. Sure, it's far-fetched and cheesy, and some of the effects are dated for the time period they were in, but the one-liners from Arnold were just so funny, they had me dying on laughing. I'll cue a few here.
Yeah. Stick around. You one ugly motherfucker. Get to the chopper!
How could I not love that? It's just so hilarious and over the top, but it's still a compelling story, and it kind of has Alien vibes, which I dig. You know, I love the movie Alien. I watched it earlier on this project, but I had so much fun with this movie that I could kind of look past the cheesiness and the questionable plot decisions, and overall, Predator is a classic for sure, and I'm glad I finally saw it. The next movie I watched is Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation, starring Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson, and Bill Murray got nominated for an Oscar for this movie, rightfully so. This man gives the best performance of his career. And I know that he's known for stuff like Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, Caddyshack, where he's giving these kind of goofy comedic performances, but here you really get to see his dramatic acting chops as he is playing a man who's kind of having a midlife crisis in a sense. As he's in Tokyo, he's trying to get away from his family, and then he meets a young Scarlett Johansson who's going through similar yet different phases of her own life as she kind of is going through a marriage that she feels is not as romantic as it should be, not as great as she thought it would be, and these two characters have this little friendship throughout the movie that I thought was so heartfelt. And I always love romantic movies where two characters shouldn't work on paper, but you get to see their chemistry and their growth as a relationship, whether that be friend or romantic throughout the film. And I just loved that vibe of this movie. It was almost a hangout movie in a sense, but there was a little bit of urgency as these two people were trying to really find themselves in a limited period of time they had together. And I just really dug everything about this. I think the screenwriting was phenomenal. I know it got an Oscar nomination, and I was really happy to see that. It actually won, I think, the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, which is fantastic. But this movie was just so charming, so heartfelt, and really touched on my heartstrings in the end. I can't wait to watch it again. The next movie that I watched is Election, starring Matthew Broderick and Reese Witherspoon, and this is another movie that kind of was hyped up for me a little. It wasn't my cup of tea, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not a big satirical guy. Satire movies like Vice, I've never really been a fan of, so I was kind of cautiously optimistic heading into this movie, and unfortunately, I didn't love it. I definitely respect the filmmaking and the unique way the story is told with a lot of changing point of views and perspectives, and you get to see the madness of the school election and how it can affect people for the rest of their lives. Really touches on these different personality traits that people have, kind of pokes fun at them in a way, but for me, I wasn't laughing as much as I thought. I thought it was going to be more comedic. Sure, there were some moments of brilliance, but for me, I found the characters and what was happening sort of uninteresting, and the people themselves very hard to root for in a sense, so I just didn't love Election. I liked it. It was fine. I don't know if I would want to watch it again. The next movie I watched is perhaps one of the cheesiest, yet greatest action films of all time, Point Break. I am so satisfied with this movie because there was a lot of hype building up to it for me. I know my dad loves this movie. He'd always been trying to get me to watch it. I was not disappointed, let me tell you that. I loved this movie. I really did. Sure, there's some very cheesy aspects, especially Gary Busey's character, who is just crazy. Keanu Reeves plays Johnny Utah, the FBI agent who used to be a college football star, and he has to meet up with Bodie the surfer, who he suspects might be into some bank robbing. The action set pieces for a 90s film were pretty spectacular. There were some cool skydiving scenes in this movie, and I absolutely loved the way this film wrapped up. I think it's one of my favorite endings from like an 80s or 90s action movie. It was just so satisfying, and I won't spoil it here, but I loved the decision that was made. I was like, are they going to do what I think they're going to do? They are. Yes, I loved it so much. So if you have not seen Point Break, do yourself a favor and enjoy the cheesiness that it is. The last movie that I watched in this update is a movie that I am ashamed to say I had not seen to this point. I know that it's a classic for many. The Goonies. This movie is directed by Richard Donner, and it actually is written, the story is written by Steven Spielberg, and he's also a producer on the film, I want to say. So you can definitely feel Spielberg's presence in this movie. I'll say right off the bat, it feels like an Indiana Jones adventure with kids. That's straight up what it is. I think if I had grown up with this movie, like when I was 10 or 12 watching this movie, I would have absolutely loved it. The fact that I watched it now at the age that I am, I didn't love it as much, but I totally respect and understand why people view it as a classic. The truffle shuffle is hilarious, and the kids' chemistry is great. It's funny to see a young Thanos as one of the main characters in this film. And you also get Sean Astin in this movie, who goes on to be in Lord of the Rings and Stranger Things, and he plays Rudy. So just seeing the cast, this young, talented cast, they have such great chemistry on screen, and seeing them go on an adventure was just a ton of fun. This is an 80s classic by all means. I'm very happy I watched it. I didn't love the movie, but I really did enjoy it for what it was. Yeah, guys, so that is a wrap for this 100 Movies I Missed update. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm having a ton of fun doing this project, kind of taking my time through it, because I have until the end of the year, so there's no reason for me to rush it. It was my New Year's resolution, so I kind of want to savor it as I go along. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a lot of content planned, live streams, collabs, all that fun stuff, and consider hitting the like button and commenting movies down below that you have watched for the first time recently, and what did you think of them? What did you think of the movies I watched in this update? I'd be interested to hear all that. I love talking to you guys in the comments. So stick around for some new videos coming soon, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.